Hi everyone, welcome to this video. In this video, we will be talking about the CSS media query and also why the CSS media query is probably not working on your mobile browsers. We will be talking about some little CSS logics as well. So if you're interested in these, I have dropped a timestamp down at the description of this video so help you navigate to any of this topic that might interest you. So let's dive in. So on this document, we actually have a basic HTML document here, and we have this particular meta tag, which I have commented out on purpose because I actually want to talk about that later on. And over here, we've linked our CSS style sheet, and here's an empty CSS style sheet, basically. So we're just going to get started with some things and try to use media queries in different ways. So to use media queries, the first thing we need to do is to write our @media. And if I should press my enter key here, we can see it actually completes this to be @media. Then it has this particular word here called screen. Now, this is a media query type. So we have different types of media query. We have the screen, we have the print, we have the all, and we also have the speech, which is not really used in most cases. So we have the speech, we have the screen, I meant to say here, and the screen is the most commonly used one. And another one we have here is the print, and we also have all. And when we want to use all, is that equivalent to us writing nothing. So when we really did not really specify, the browser assumed that we want this particular media query to be applied in all type of media, including the print media, speech media, and also the screen media as well. And when we talk about the print media, we're talking about a situation whereby the developer actually wants this particular type of styles to be applicable only when the user is about to print. And for that of the screen, it simply means we want this to be available only when the user is on a screen device like a mobile phone or a laptop or any other screen device that we have. Okay, so over here we can see that we have media query screen, and what is written inside the bracket here is actually the media query expression. Now, this is actually what instructs the browser, and it's actually saying that, okay, I want you to apply whatsoever we're going to write in here as long as these conditions here are true. And that's what basically media query is all about. Apply what's in here as long as these conditions are true. So what's the condition we have here? In this case, we are saying that as long as it is the screen and as long as this condition here is true, which I'm going to get into in a jiffy. So the first thing I want to talk about here is basically the print media. So for the print media, I'm just going to save this now and I'll go back to my HTML. I'm going to make an h1 tag and I'll say this is a sample text. And if I just save this, we can see that this is the sample text is showing up there, and I'm going to print it like I want to print this, and we can see this is the sample text showing up here. What I'm going to do now is that I want a situation whereby if I want to print this particular text, I want the color to be different. So how am I going to do that? I can just set target our body elements here. So it's going to target everything, or rather, let me just target our h1 elements. I can actually write any single element like I can write in my regular CSS within the media query. So in this case, I'm targeting the h1 element, and I'm going to change the color now. So I'm going to say that the color should be red in this case. So I should save this now. We can still see, and then refresh again. So you see that this is technically black, but whenever I try to print, it turns red. And this is the power of the print media query. So we can actually use this to do any single thing. I can decide to come over here and let me add another tag here, the h2 tag, and I'm going to say this is the h2 tag. So if I should save that, we have two texts over here at this moment. Now I can say that I want the h2 to be red, and I want the h1 not to even show up at all. So I'm going to say that these should be display none. So if I should save this now and I refresh, everything is still normal because I'm not targeting the screen media. I am targeting the print media. So whatsoever is written in here is only going to be applicable for only print medias. So I'm going to try pressing Ctrl P, not there, over here. I'll try pressing Ctrl P now. We can see that we don't have our H1 tag showing up over here anymore, but we have our H2 tag, and our H2 tag has the color of red. H1 tag is displaying none. So this is basically how we can control our print media using the media query. You might want to ask, what's basically the use case with this? So in a situation whereby you're building a website that's like a blog website, or you're building a website like that gives news basically, and you have a whole lot of ads showing at the left and the right, and you want a situation whereby when your user prints that particular web page, you want them to focus on the article. You can basically use the print media query to make the print media to be focused only on the article itself and not on the other distractions on the left and the right. So that's just basically a use case for this. So let's go on to our screen media now. So in this case now, I'm just going to say add media, and we have the screen over here. So let's take a look at this. If I should say in our screen, I basically want this to be the inverse of this. So I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to paste this over here. So what I'm going to say is that I want this to be the H1. I want this to be the H1, and I want this to be the H2. So you can see what's going on here. We actually have our H1 to be red, but H2 is having a display of none. So this is applicable for just the screen media alone. We can't see our H2, but when we try to print this now, we can just go Ctrl P, and then we'll see our H2 over there. But on the actual screen, we'll see our H1. So this is more like a comparison of what the print media and the screen media actually really is. So that is it about the screen media and the print media in terms of comparison. I'm just going to take away the print media now and focus more on the screen media. So now let's talk about screen media. So now I'm going to say screen, and I have this expression alongside with it. So I'll come over here and I'll write 500 pixels just to change that to 500 pixels. So what we have here, and I'm explaining this a little. So here we have our type of screen, which simply means that this is going to only be effective on screen devices itself. But when we come over here, we see another expression, and this expression is actually saying that this should only be applicable when the width is not less than 500 pixels. So when we talk about min width, we're saying that, okay, apply this when the width is not less than, that is, it's not below the minimum width of 500 pixels. So we can see over here that obviously the width of this particular web page is beyond 500 pixels. So if I should try opening my developer tool and I try moving this, so you can see here we have 585 pixels, right? So the moment it goes below 500 pixels, this particular rule here will no longer be executed. So let's see that now. I'm going to take this down, and now you can see we're in 495. You can see this, and this is no longer executed anymore. And when we try to move it down to 500, let's see, 500. You can see at the point of 500, it got executed immediately. So this is actually what the min width does, and we can actually use this for mobile responsiveness to say that, okay, I want to see this on the mobile screen, but I want to see this on a large screen. So let's take a look at this. A very good use case. So let's say we have a heading, and we say our heading is an H1 tag on a very large screen, but on a smaller screen, we want our heading to be probably an H3 tag. We'll have to change this for that. So let's say this is H3 and this is H3. Let's save that now. And we are going to say we want this particular, let's undo this. We're going to say that this should be display none over here. That simply means we want this to show on a larger device. And whenever the width is above 500, this H3 tag should not be displayed. And whenever the width is below 500, it should be displayed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this, and I'll paste this over here, and I'm going to make a media query. And the next one I'm going to make is going to be a max width. So here now I'm going to say that when we have a max width of 500, or I'm going to say of 499, to be more specific, 499. And at this point now, I would say that this H3 tag, the H3 tag should be red, while the H1 tag should be none. So let's take a look at this now. So if I should go this way, I am going to see that at the point of 500 pixel, at this particular point of 499, we actually have the both of them showing up. So what I'm going to do now is to change this rather to 500 pixels, and we can see that we don't have really have that there anymore. So if we should move just a pixel further, here we have 499 and here we have 500. It's actually very difficult to target that. So this is 500 and we have nothing showing up. So this is actually targeting over. Okay, yeah, I see that. So we really need to be careful whenever we are using the min width and the max width, and I'm going to show us an easy way to do this. So to do this now, I'm going to say that this should be of a minimum width of 501. And when we save this now, let's go. So we can see for this 499, and over here, when we get to 500, which is actually the max width for this, it is still showing the H1 tag. But the moment we move over to 501, we can see over here that it is showing the H1 tag. And for this other small one, it is showing the H2 tag. So this is actually what we can use media query to do. But there's an easier way of writing this, because this whole min width, max width is actually a little bit confusing, and the way we can actually make this very simple for us is by using some arithmetic expressions. So when we talk about that, it's not really called an arithmetic expression actually. I gave that name. So let's say at media, and we're targeting the screen, or let's just target all media this time around. So I'm just going to put our brackets in this case, and at this particular point in time, it simply means I'm targeting all media, even if I really do not write the keyword of all in this case. So let's go on. I'm going to say our width, when our width, and instead of me saying our width is this or our min width is this, I'm going to say when our width is greater than 500 pixel. And I think this is very easy to understand. And this is actually the way I do this on a day-to-day basis, but this really wasn't really available some few years back, and now we have this over here. So this is actually great. So I remember I changed this to H3, so I'm just going to change this back to H2, so we are going to be on the same page. Okay, so this is going to be H2, and I'm going to say that the H2 should be a display of none, so I'm going to change this to none at this point. And if I should save this now, you can see that we don't have the H2 tag showing up anymore, because the width, like you can see over here, because the width is actually beyond 500 pixels. So if I should minimize this, and now at this point whereby the width is no longer above 500 pixel, we have this showing up, and whenever it's, now we can see 500 pixels, it is showing up because it is not greater than 500 pixels. So if we wanted to stop showing from 500 pixel and above, what we just need to do is to come over here and say that when it is greater than or when it is equal to 500 pixels. Now you can see that we don't have this anymore, and if we should come over here just a pixel lesser, we have this showing up over here. So that is just it on how we could use expressions here. And we can also say when it is less than as well, same thing will be applicable. And you can see that right now it is less than, and when we go up, we have this showing up. And when we come here, you can just see the different things that we have here. So let's see again over here. We can also say like when it is less than, okay. So we can say that when it is less than or when it is equal to 500 pixels, and that is going to be applied as well. So let's see this. So I'll move over to 500 pixels. We don't really see this anymore, but when we come over here, we actually see this. So this is just basically how we can actually show or hide elements depending on the screen of our device or the width of our device. So this is really come in handy whenever you deal with anything about responsiveness. Let's say, for example, you really don't want to show the type of navbar you have on the desktop on a mobile. You can just hide that navbar using this, and you can just show another type of navbar when you are on your mobile screen or when you are on a specific screen width. So let's take a look at something. When we are talking about responsiveness, we usually turn on this tool, right? So I would like to bring this to our notice that there are some things here that we should take note of. So first thing we need to take notes of is basically the device type. For some reason, like, okay, here it is. Okay, device type, I have that enabled already. So I can't find it. I think I have to maximize this now. Okay, so here we have add device type. Great. So we have desktop, and we can see that we are currently on our desktop mode. So if I should do this, this is definitely going to work just like normal, right? But there are some cases whereby if I should change this to mobile, this will not really work as expected. Now you can see that our width right now is at 207 pixels, but we are still having our two text being displayed over here, which is not the case if we should switch this to desktop. So what exactly is going on here? So, and I know that these have actually got a whole lot of people frustrated, and they'll be like, what's going on here? Because it's working on my desktop device, but whenever I move it to my phone, it's no longer working anymore. So what exactly is going on here? So let's take a look at this. Let's switch this back to mobile again, and we can see we have both of them. And when we switch it to desktop, it's giving us the actual result. So let's take a look at how to solve this problem. At the beginning of the video, you remember I said that I commented this on purpose. So whenever you have an issue like this, just come over here and write this particular type of meta elements, like this meta, viewport, and the content. And over here in the content, we say that the width should be equal to the device width, and the initial scale should be 1.0. So I'm going to explain what that means in a jiffy, but first let's see this in action. So can you see now everything is working as normal? And if I should comment this out again, and let's refresh this. Okay, we are currently on desktop. Sorry about that. So let's switch back to mobile. And if I should uncomment this, save it, you can see it's working as normal. And if I should do the inverse, you can see it is not working the way it's supposed to work. So let's uncomment this and let's really see what's happening. Or rather, let's comment this and let's see what's happening. So let's come over here and we'll go to our element and let's take a look at this. What's the width of this page? We are currently 277. So now let's take a look at what's happening here. According to Chrome, or according to our browser actually thinks that the width of our screen is actually 964. And that's why it's trying to adjust to 964. And for some reasons, our media query is not really applicable because we're targeting the width of 500. So why is this happening? This is because, I'm just going to explain this way. Let's just assume that the 964 is more like the default width of our HTML elements. Let's just say our HTML element here is basically 964, and which is actually okay for a desktop computer. That is a very good way for a desktop computer. But when we're on our mobile phone wants to be like, okay, I'm going to bring everything to 964 into this small device, and it's not really going to work. So what this actually does is that we are telling this to use a width of our device width, meaning that it shouldn't use the 964 anymore, but it should use our device width. So it simply means that if our device width is 277, let the width of our entire HTML document be 277. If our device width is 380, let it be 380, and so on and so forth. And this is more like the zoom ratio, and just like saying, okay, don't zoom, don't unzoom it, just leave it the way it is. So if we should come over here now, we can see that this is 277, and when we come over here, we can see that this is 277, and then we have 0.6. This doesn't actually show points, so that's understandable. So when we increase this now to 453, we have this 453 over here, and we can see that our media query is actually being applied on a mobile device. So if you are having an issue whereby you've written your wonderful media query and it's working on your desktop, but for some reasons it's not working on your mobile device, this is exactly how you go about fixing it, just with the use of one HTML meta tag. So I'm going to add this particular code in the description below, just in case you need this. So the next thing we're going to be taking a look at here is actually how to manipulate content within our web page depending on the screen of the height of our screen rather. So I'm going to be moving over to the CSS here, and I'm going to say instead of this expression, I'm going to say when we have a max width, I'm in caps. So when we have a max width, so let's say max width of 500 pixels, and we'll save this. This time around, I want to control our body. So I'm going to say our body should have a different background color. So I'm going to say this should have a background color of, I really wish I know a color right now, but I'm just going to use red, for instance. And if I should save that, you can see that as long as the width, I'm supposed to use max height. I'm sorry about this. So we're going to say when we have a max height of this, and it's saying that as long as the height doesn't exceed 500, this should be the background color. So like you can see here, we have a height of 410. So it's going to be red until we exceed 500. So at this point now, you can see at this particular point, we're still within 500. And when we exceed 500, it goes back to white. So that simply means that we can also control the height, what shows up on our web page, or what happens on our web page, depending on the height of the screen as well. So just like we can use max width and min width, we can also use I'm going to undo this and just change this to min. So we can also use min width as well, which is actually the opposite of max width. So saving this now, it's going to be red here, and when it becomes smaller, it's going to be white. And if I should say I want to use the greater than or less than, I can say that when the height is, let's say, greater than or equal to 500, we want it to be red. So when we go up, you can see that this is still working, just like it's working for that of the width as well. And when we say when it's less than or equal to 500, it should be this, and this is just working perfectly well. Okay, so the next thing we'd like to talk about here is actually the display mode. So we've talked about the height and the width, how to manipulate height and width using CSS, but there's something else we can talk about as well, which is the display mode. So it's not basically height and width that we can only manipulate with media queries. There are also other features of media query like the display mode. So let's talk about this a little. So over here, I'm just going to take away the height entirely, and I'm going to say that when we have a display mode, and this display mode comes with several properties. One of them is actually the full screen. So I'm going to say full screen. And if I should save this, what's the expectation here? The expectation is that whenever we go on full screen, we want the background to be red. So it will never be red unless we go on full screen. And a realistic example, a realistic use case of this could be, let's say we have a video on a specific web page, and when the person goes into full screen, we want the video to possibly just go landscape. So possibly we've already detected that the person is on a mobile device. So when the person goes full screen on a mobile device, we just want the video to go full screen as well. So without seeing the remaining part of the page, we just want only the video to go full screen when the person is on a mobile device. So this can come in handy there. For now, we're targeting the background color, but in reality, we can actually target the width and the height, and we can as well target the position of the screen to be fixed, and give it a 100 view height, 100 view width, and that's just going to be like it's displaying all over the screen. You get the idea. So let's see this in action anyway. So when we save this now, and I press F11 to go full screen, can you see what's going on here? So right now, it's the particular web page has gone full screen, and it's now red. And if I should come back, it's going to be white. Go to full screen again, it's going to be red. Come back, it's going to be white. So this is actually very, very useful as well. And we can also detect as well, another thing we can detect, another feature is the hover. So we can say hover should be also equal to hover. So let's say hover is this way. So what this simply means is that if the device has the ability to use hover, we can actually style things based on that. And what exactly do we mean by hover? Let's take a look at this. So let's say that we have an H tag over here, I'm just going to be linking this to nowhere, and I would say this is a link, isn't it? So for me to be able to have this pointer over here, it simply means that this is an hover device. But on a mobile phone is technically not a hover device because we can't really hover over things to make some kind of effect to happen. So a mobile phone is technically not a hover device. So this is not this kind of pointer. We can't see it on the mobile phone. So in that case, this is a way of selecting desktop in some cases. But if we should go over here, let's open our developer tool. Let me expand this a little. And let's open our developer tool. Let's move into mobile. Remember, we're on desktop now. So you can see, because of mobile device and not hover devices, when we switch to mobile, we don't have this showing up anymore. And when we switch back to desktop, we have this showing because desktop is an hover device. A very good use case of this is actually how we handle links. So let's say that we want our A tags, for instance, not to have to be normal when it is hover, but when hover is equal to none, which is going to be for the mobile devices, we want our A tag to have a font size. Probably we want them to be bigger for some reason, so people can easily click on them. So let's say we want the font size to be, I know it's going to be very big, let's just say 2 EM or 1 EM as the case may be. So if I should switch this now back to mobile, I guess that's small. So let's say we're using 2 EM now. So we switch this back to mobile. You can see that this is actually very big. And when we come over here, it's small. Come over here, it becomes big. And let's just say we want to add like a background color. Say, depending on how you want to style this, let's say we want to add a background color of this, and we'll say text decoration should be none as well. So this is actually how we want to depict links on a mobile device or on any device that actually do not have the hover. But when we're on a desktop device, we want our link to just show the regular way. So this is also possible with CSS Media Query as well. So that being said, let's move over to the next one. And the next one is actually one of my favorites. It's just based on orientation. So we can say, we can actually make things to happen depending on the orientation of our screen. So I'm going to say that this should be orientation. And we could go landscape and portrait. So in this case now, I want to use the body again. So I'm going to say body, and I'll be making use of the background color. So I'll be changing the background color, I'll be changing the background color depending on what's actually going on. So I'll duplicate this. Okay, and let's say that this is going to be portrait. So now I'm going to change this to be blue. Let's save this. So now you can see that at this particular point in time, I think I should just select, let's say an iPhone 12 for this. At this particular point in time, the phone is technically on a portrait mode. And when we change the phone to a landscape mode, I think we can do that from over here. Oh, okay, it's actually over here. So when we actually rotate this device, it turns to red. And when we go this way, it goes to portrait. So we can still use this kind of media query for same implementation. So on a page that has a video in it, we want whenever the video is on landscape, it should just go full screen and make the whole video to appear everywhere. So this can also be applicable on that as well. So this landscape and this is portrait, and that is what the orientation of media query does. So let's take a look at that. Currently it's on portrait now anyways, and this portrait to landscape, this actual landscape, we can see that the width is actually greater than the height. So that's just how we detect that. Okay, so that's been said, the next thing we're going to be taking a look at, it's actually a very interesting one, which is the preferred color scheme. So talking about our preferred color scheme, I'm going to just probably make another media query for that. Or let me remove this instead. So let's see this, and I'm just going to change this to, let's say, prefers color scheme. So our prefers color scheme could either be dark or light. So let's say dark now, for instance. So what we're actually saying here is that if our user prefers a dark theme, like I do, you can see that my IDE is actually in a dark theme mode right now. So if our user prefers a dark theme, we want them to make we want to use the background color. Let's say we want our background color to be white. I don't need that to be important. So we want that to be white, and we also want our text. Sorry, when the user prefers a dark color scheme, we want our background color to be dark. So let's just say black, for instance. We want that to be black, and we want our text color. We want our text color to be white. So when we save this now, this is how we want our page to display on the dark mode. But if we want our page to display in another way, when we're on the light mode, I'm just going to copy this, and I'll paste this here. And I'm going to say light. So on the light mode, I want our background to be white. And I want our text to be black. Just something like just opposite. So you can see that this is actually not, it's not taking effect right now because currently I am on dark mode. So let me open my system settings. So I'm going to be changing the, I'm going to be switching my entire computer from dark mode to light mode. So what I'm going to do is just going to come over here, and I'm going to switch to light mode. So like you can see over here, I have my browser currently on the light mode. You can see here, and everything changes. If I should switch this back to dark mode, everything equally changes as well. So that simply means that if what I prefer, if the color scheme that I prefer is dark, it's going to apply the black background and the white text. But if I should prefer a light color scheme, it's going to apply the white background and the black text. So this is just for accessibility feature based on what the user actually prefers. So I'm going to switch this over to dark mode again, and I'm just going to take this away. So this is it about the prefers color scheme, and this is basically how, or I would say this is the basic of how you can make day and light mode on your website as well. So that's it. Okay, so let's talk about some logic in CSS media queries. But before we do that, let's also talk about the ordering, like the preference within this specific media query. So let me just show you this quickly. So if we, at this point, we're actually on a dark mode, like we can see over here. And we are currently using this rule, so this rule really did not apply. But what if I should come over here and I say that the background color is, let's just say blue, for example, and I save this? What's actually going to happen here? Okay, I didn't put this in the selector. I should have done that. Okay, so let's say we have our body here and we have this. But we're currently on our dark mode, and we said that the media query should use this. So why is it showing us the blue here? There's a question that one might be wondering. And the reason why this is that in CSS as a whole, this has nothing to do with media query. Is because the rule that was states at the bottom of the page would always be executed over the ones at the top. So this would always, the browser will always take preference with the last rule that we have over there. If we should take this, I should take this out, and I should put this at the top over here, you would see that we're going back to dark mode. But if I should comment this out now, you can see it's blue again. So always ensure that whenever you're writing your media query, because if you want your media query to overwrite an already existing rule, always ensure that your media query is always at the bottom of the screen. So that being said, let's take a look at some more logic over here. So you remember that we said that we can actually make preference with the dark mode and the light mode and all that. So let's just take this out first, and let us write something for our light mode in another way using a CSS logic known as NOT. So let's take a look at this. Instead of us to go this way to write prefers color scheme light, I'm also going to say that this is dark at the moment. And you can see that the last rule would always win in this case because we have these two rules to be the same thing, but it just take preference for the last one. But this is not what I intend to do. I intend to use a CSS logic known as not, a CSS media query logic known as not. So what this is actually saying is that when this is not dark, which means it's light, right? When this is not dark, this should be executed. So if I should change this now over to our light theme, we can see that this is now being executed over here. And if I should change it back to the dark theme again, we can see that this is executed again. So this is just how the not actually works. And we can see this in action in many other ways. So let's just say at media query, and we're going to say that when it is not screen, we could say that when it is not screen, simply means that it could either be a print media and it could also be a speech media as well. So we are going to come over here. We're going to say that when it is not screen, we want this h1 tag. We want the h1 tag. We want it to have a color of red. So let's say we want this to have a color of red. Okay, that's not red. So let's say we want it to have a color of red, and I save this. You can see that there's no difference in here. But when I try to print this now, let's see. Because of this is not a screen, this is a print media, and as such, it's going to have a color of red. So I can also say that when this is not a speech media, when this is not a speech media, I want this to have a color of red. And now you can see, because of the screen is not technically a speech media, it is having a color of red. And if I should try to print, same result is going to happen because this is also not a speech media. So not is actually something that is used to get the inverse of a particular thing, or just to get something that is not what we actually specify. Like in this case, this is getting the inverse, and this is saying that when it is not what is actually being specified over here. So not is actually very interesting CSS media query logic for us to know. So another logic that we need to take note of here is basically our and or logic. I know I've actually talked about the and logic when I say that when this is not a speech media, and I've actually said this several times, and we have the width when it has a main width of 768 pixels and all that. So this is trying to ensure that this is not a speech media, but I'm going to be making use of and in another way now. I'm going to take this out, or I'll make another one. I'm just going to make another media query. I'm going to say media when we have a media query here. So let's say that we have a width. When the width is greater than 0, when this is greater than 0, and I'll come here and I'll say and the width is less than 200 pixels. What do we want to happen? So this we're simply saying over here that this particular condition should only take place when the width is greater than 0 and when it is also less than 200 pixels. So I believe that's self-explanatory. So what we want to do in this case is that we want the body, we want our body over here to have a background color of let's say gray, amount of colors. So I'm just using anything. So we want this to have a background color of gray, and we can see that this is not being executed right now, and that's because of, like you can see over here, our width is currently at 484 or so. So the moment we get to something less than 200 pixels, which is actually this, we can see that it is now gray, and we can't really get to 0, but even if we should get to 0, even if we should get to 1, I meant to say, this would still be executed over there. So we can still go further, and we can make another media query here. We can make another media query, and we can say at media. I'm still going to be making use of the and over here, but we're going to concatenate the both of them very soon. So let's go. When the width is, let's say when the width is greater than, in this case, let's just say 600 pixels, or let's say 500 pixels. And over here, when it is less than, 700 pixels. I'm going to save this now, and we want the body and our background color should be probably purple or something. So in this case now, let's see. When we move over here, you can see that this is greater. It's actually taken our dark mode, our preferred scheme color, because of right now, we can see that we're around 420. So this cannot get executed because it is not within this. And it is also not within this because it's not yet up to 500 pixels. So by the time we move over to 500 pixels, we can see that our background color changes. And when we move as small as this, we can see it changes as well. But what if we don't want to, what if we want to use the same color? Let's say at this point, we also want to use the same color of gray. So let's say that this is going to be gray. And you can see this now. And when we come over here, it is black. And when we go over here, it is gray again. But since we're having these two colors to be the same, I think it's going to be better to just add the both of them together in one single media query. So to do that now, I'm going to copy this particular expression here. I'll take away the media query. And then I'm going to say that when the width is greater than, when the width is greater than 0 and it is less than 200 pixels, then I add a comma. This comma simply means or the width is greater than 500 pixels and less than 700 pixels. This particular background color here should be executed. So right now we can see that the width is at 150 pixels. When we get to something above 200 pixels, it stops being executed. And when we get to something from 500 pixels and above, we can see that it's been executed again. So that's it on the CSS Media Query. If you consider this video to be useful, please remember to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to click the subscription button down below. Bye for now.